Welcome to another show of the brand called You. Today I have a friend, an entrepreneur, and someone who has built a very, very powerful fashion brand. Siddharth Bindra, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's entirely a pleasure.
Siddharth is the promoter and managing director of the very iconic brand called BIBA. He's been in the business since 1997, 21 years in the textile and apparel industry, and he's a very avid cricketer and a sportsman. So, Siddharth, I know you built BIBA as a successful brand. Tell us some of the early challenges you had when you were building BIBA.
When I joined the business in '97, we were operating out of the house. My mother had built a very successful brand and business, and I think I had to really just step in and scale the business up. But being a first generation business, really cash flow was the biggest problem. We couldn't take debt, and you could only grow as much as you made. So I think managing cash flow in the first 4-5 years was my biggest challenge. And I think those were periods that gave me deep learning and insights into the business, which really hold me good today.
Wonderful. And over the last 20 years, BIBA is a brand you see everywhere. I mean, you have 275 stores in 108 cities. One of the biggest challenges I faced in Guardian was scaling up. And when I look at you scaling up BIBA, you seem to have done it effortlessly. But what were your challenges when you were scaling up?
I think I've had different challenges at different times. The challenges keep changing. The challenges in a business like you mentioned is, of course, real estate is a big challenge. Retail is an extremely people-driven business. So people make a huge impact right from the salesperson at the store. So multiple challenges. We are in the fashion business. Fashion changes very fast. Keeping abreast with fashion is a major challenge. So I think different challenges along the way.
In fact, you've taken away my next question from your comment.
Yeah.
But, the fashion business keeps changing. I mean, there are colors for autumn and there are colors for summer and there are colors for spring, and then there are designs that change. Must be a nightmare to handle inventory of such large volumes and yet keep on changing fashions.
Yes, I think the fashion business is a very fast changing and reasonably complex and tough business. Having said that, it's a mix of art and science. There is a lot of science and there's a lot of data that is there, and I think it makes business much easier. But I think science and data can help you follow trends, but art helps you set a trend. So in the fashion business, you hit it big when you really set trends. The Indian wear category, which BIBA is a part of, is actually a very fast changing fashion category. If I just look at our brand over the last 10 years, 10 years back, we introduced anarkalis.
Yeah.
From anarkalis, it went to kalidars. From there, the fashion moved to asymmetrical kurtas, then to long kurtas, and to short kurtas. The bottoms also play a very different role. You have a normal salwar, then you have chudidars. The fashion moved to plazos. From there, it went to ghagras, then to wide plazos, narrow plazos, embroidered plazos, and then a mix of the kurtas and the bottoms. So it's a very fast changing industry. But having said that, I think data helps you understand business very well. And it's a great place to be, because innovation is always the key part in this business.
So, a question that has always intrigued me when I look at fashion: who decides fashion? Do you do research and say this is what the customer wants, or do you determine what you think the customer should get from a fashion perspective?
Sure. No, it's a bit of both, Ashutosh. I mean, it is a bit of both, and frankly, when we launch a new item, it's like the box office. You launch something on a weekday, and over a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you know whether what you've launched is good or bad. But again, there is a lot of research that goes into it. I think as someone in the fashion business, you have to be very observant. You have to observe culture around you. You have to observe things that inspire you or things you believe are inspiring society at large, and be able to take your own connotations out of that into fashion. Of course, it's an established industry, so there are enough cues within the industry to follow. And there are set parameters also, I think, that people can pick up and be able to follow.
Because when I go overseas and I'm looking at multiple stores, some year every fashion designer has gone into orange. Some years everyone has gone into mauve. Now I'm sure all of you are not sitting together and saying, let's do this.
Yes.
So there must be some.
Yeah, there are trends. So there are established trend forecast companies, houses, which forecast trends, forecast colors, forecast all sorts of information that a person may require to put fashion together. But that still doesn't guarantee it. I think if there was a guarantee of how to do this through science, everyone could do it. We all aspire that we set the right trend, and every time a fashion business sets a trend, it's a multi-bagger.
So would I be safe in saying that next time I buy something and it goes out of fashion, I put it in my cupboard for the next 10 years and it's going to come back again?
I think pretty much. A lot of fashion does. It is a circle that does come back. It could take 5 years, it could take 10 years. One can't predict that. But a lot of fashion does come back.
You spoke about BIBA being founded by your mom, and I hold her in very, very high respect and regard. And I do intend to call her, invite her for this show. But, staying with fashion, someone was saying that even though you have a lot of designers, the designs that sell the most are the ones that your mom designs.
Yeah, I think.
Is it because she has the pulse of the market or the consumer?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely amazing. I mean, she's not even a trained designer. She wasn't an entrepreneur. She started the business at the age of 40 when I was grown up, and she got a little extra time. But yeah, I think from the first time she started a range, she got a certain pulse. And I think what's incredible is the passion which she still has, where she's herself designs and creates product and continues to do well.
Amazing. No, so she's on my list. She's going to come and tell us about her story. So, you have launched BIBA, you've launched Rangriti.
Yes.
I have two questions I want to ask you.
Sure.
First is, what was your logic of Rangriti? And second is, how has your experience been in the customer experience of an urban customer or a BIBA customer and a Rangriti customer?
Sure. So, as the leading brand, when we started envisioning what is the next 5 or 10 years for our company, we found that the market was clearly segmented into 3 broad segments. One was the unbranded segment, which is nearly 70% of the market. Then was the mid to premium segment, and then was the luxury segment. BIBA as a brand sat pretty well in the mid to premium segment, but 70% of the market was in the unbranded space, and that's where we got the inspiration to create Rangriti.
What does Rangriti mean?
Rang and Riti. Rang is color, and Riti is fashion in Sanskrit, so it's colorful. And you see, Indian fashion is very, very colorful. So that's where the name got inspired from. So Rangriti is actually a very casual wear, affordable Indian wear brand. If I look at the vast Indian market, we have over 600 districts, and Rangriti as a brand could immediately really retail out of every district in India. So that's the expanse that we believe we have for Rangriti.
And would you, for the Rangriti customers, then you would make BIBA an aspirational brand?
Yes, it would be. I think the product lines are different. As I said, Rangriti is a young, casual wear brand, and that's the area it's focusing on. While the BIBA product line would vary to semi-formals, to formals, and a much larger portfolio of product at this point. But yes, we would hope we'll be able to shift consumers from the unbranded space to a Rangriti and gradually to a BIBA.
And how different are the customers of both the brands?
They are fairly different at this point of time because geographically it's also very different. We have started Rangriti in Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, UP, besides Delhi and some other metro cities. There would be a little bit of overlap, like in any category. But I think the intent is to really take Rangriti to spaces which are not serviced by BIBA first.
And then, open a BIBA there at a later date or something.
Yes, absolutely. I think Rangriti over a period of time will inspire many BIBA stores.
And do you see any cannibalization of customers between the two brands?
Not really. I think at a very small level.
Okay. In BIBA, I was reading, you've also acquired a stake in Anju Modi to enter the bridal and luxury ethnic wear. Tell us a little bit about this initiative.
As I mentioned, there were three categories: the mid to premium, and the third was the luxury segment. In the luxury segment, we believe we don't have the DNA really to create a brand, and we believed it would be best to partner with a designer and help create a brand. In Anju Modi, I think we found one of the best designers in the country. I personally think she has one of the best aesthetics in the country today, and a hugely established Bollywood designer. And I think that's what has inspired us to invest into Anju Modi and collaborate and take the brand ahead.
And then she creates designs and
yes, in fact, this Diwali we are also co-created a line, and there is a BIBA by Anju Modi line which will be launched this Diwali.
So that's a new brand that's
coming. We haven't actually announced it, so we're announcing it here through the show.
We're flattered to be the first channel to get this. And I've followed BIBA. I've known your family for many, many years. I remember you were the pioneers of Bollywood merchandising. If I remember, it was a Madhuri Dixit movie where you had got the rights and then you started marketing it.
Yes, that was, I think, the second movie. The first one we got, I think some of these things just happened instantly. Mr. Kishore Byani, who later became my first investor, but during those days in the early 2000s, he produced a movie called Na Tum Jano Na Hum. And we were sitting and we decided to do the merchandising of that movie. What that meant is we made the identical products that were being worn in that movie and retailed it through our store. Till then, official Bollywood merchandising never existed in the country.
Yes.
And that was the first time that Bollywood merchandising happened. After that, over the next 4-5 years, we did around 10 projects. I think by the 10th project, this more or less meant we used to help the producers market the movie through our stores, through our retail environments, through a lot of events at these stores. And in exchange, we would get the merchandising rights, which would of course create some excitement and curiosity for customers to visit our stores. It worked extremely well till I think producers became much smarter and started asking for a lot more money. But I think it helped the brand a lot. At that age, it clearly differentiated the brand. It was our first over-the-line marketing and advertising, and I think clearly gave us a distance from the market.
And what role does technology play? In of course designing is one, but even in retailing. I mean, I was in Taiwan or in South Korea, where you can actually go online, at a store, stand there in front of a screen, and you can try out virtual images.
Yes.
How does that work, and do you see that coming into India?
Yeah, I think retail is definitely at an inflection point. I can't predict how many years that's going to take in India, but over the next 4-5 years, I think retail experiences will change. Technology is going to play a large part in businesses and retail businesses, and I think across the chain of the business, right from the back-end operations automation, artificial intelligence. We are still trying to figure out how can we use that in our business. But all this could help in predicting trends, predicting fashion, predicting buys. A lot of the internal work that goes off at a retail company at the back end. And lastly, I think a consumer will want a seamless experience. So if you see something on your phone, you should be able to see it at the store, buy it on your phone, pick it up at the store, vice versa, have it delivered home. And I think all retail companies will have to build platforms that can engage with the customer seamlessly.
And do you think we're also reaching a stage where, I like your shirt, I take your picture, put it on the net and say, oh, this is where Siddharth purchased it from?
I've heard some startups doing that, with visual recognition and stuff, and there's lots happening.
Yeah.
And I think all retail companies will have to adapt to it and improve customer experience.
One last question before we move into some other segment, part of the, you're a sports person and you've played sports at a very high level. How has that influenced running a business, interacting with people, building teams, and so on? Sure.
I think sports has been an integral part of my life and really shaped my personality. I think sports taught me a lot. I think sports teaches you discipline. Because at college and school, when you play for the state, etc., there's a lot of discipline that goes into it. It teaches you hard work and I think perseverance, because you've got to go at it for many, many years. It teaches you humility, because once you're on the sports field, everything's equal and you've got to go and do that. And I think another thing it really taught me is the ability to lose and come back the next day. And every day is a fresh start. So I've been very lucky to play sport.
And working with the large teams.
Absolutely. And I've always been in a team sport, whether it's cricket, hockey. So I think you're absolutely right.
Terrific. So moving now into your role as a startup entrepreneur, because you said you really started when BIBA was still functioning from home, and you and I both know so many startups and so many entrepreneurs, successful, failed, and so on. What are some of the basic mistakes most startups make?
I don't know what are the mistakes they make, because I personally am not so involved and visible to many startups. But I think as general thought would be, I think a startup entrepreneur should identify a clear gap in the market. Build a business for the long term. Build a profitable business. I think don't build a business to sell it, but build a business to grow it. And if it's a good business, it'll always sell, it'll always raise money, etc., etc. So I think those were some of the overall thoughts.
Yeah. You have raised reasonably large sums of money twice, and you've always stayed ahead of the curve when you have to raise money. When I see a lot of entrepreneurs, they drop dead because they haven't raised money on time. What are your learnings?
I think the first is what you already said. You should raise money before time. Another one is you should raise money when you're getting it, not when you only need it. Timing of raising money is extremely important. Secondly, the partner is extremely important. You should not. An entrepreneur should spend enough time in vetting the partner, and not the highest valuation for sure. I would also say for startups and all, always go for naked equity. The valuations may be lower, but you need a genuine partner who's going to build the business with you together. And another last thought I always feel is, when you decide to raise money, always raise it and come back. You can always raise lesser money at a lower valuation, but constantly going to market and coming back without raising it is also not a good sign.
And how much money should a company have in the bank before one starts to look for money? Well, the process could take time.
I think that's difficult to answer on a general basis.
Ballpark, 12 months?
Yeah, I think from the time you want to raise money to the time you raise it, I think that's a fairly decent period of time.
But that's, I guess, the only way you won't show your own vulnerability.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you should have that much time.
Okay. So, you had a successful run. You've done a lot of things right, built BIBA, built Rangariti, scaled up, prominent brand. What is the secret of your success?
I think few things. If I look back at the journey, I think it's been a lot of hard work and perseverance, and I think the ability to constantly look ahead and take risks.
Okay, that's a good answer. And, 21 years in textiles. I remember I was listening to somebody, and, the textile minister kept taking your name because obviously you're a prominent individual in the country as far as textiles are concerned. But what keeps you going every morning?
I think the sheer excitement of creating a business, creating an organization, and expanding it is very exciting to me. I believe there's so much more that we can do with our brand and our company.
Yeah.
And I think that's what keeps me really excited, the whole process of growing the business.
Any thoughts of taking the brand international?
Yes, we do have I think a large Southeast Asian community abroad which recognizes the brand well, and there is a lot of demand for the brand. So international expansion is definitely on the lines.
And what about e-commerce?
E-commerce in India is a large part of our business already. It's close to 15% of our business.
Wow, that's big.
Yes. So I think that's a area that would continue to grow. But I don't think e-commerce is going to take over the stores either. We have a very ambitious store rollout plan, and we will continue with that. I think they will both coexist, and even large, mature retail brands in very mature internet markets, 20-25% of business comes on the net.
Yeah, but I guess the touch and feel factor is very critical in clothes, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I think the experience also, and more so in India, because I think shopping is still an entertainment. It's still a way of going out with the family, enjoying. So I think there is still the shopping experience part of it. And absolutely right. I think the touch and feel of clothes is very important.
So one question that I love to ask all my guests, and I'm going to ask you the same question. Lots of success. We also have failures.
Yeah.
What would be some of your learnings from your failures?
I've had many failures. And
Like
I
most
think,
people.
yes, and I think if I'm not having them, I'm not taking enough risk.
Correct.
But I think something that stands out for me right now is as one builds an aggressive business plan and goes after it, I think as a leader of the organization, an area that I probably didn't spend enough time was building the organization. And some of my learnings out of that has been, I think, when one is building the team, domain knowledge, past experience, achievements are very important. But I think a lot of the personal traits are equally important, like passion, energy, adaptability, and I think cultural fit into the organization. So these have been some of my learnings that I've had over the last few years.
I agree. I mean, I think one mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make is that they just assume they can do everything themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what I'm hearing you say is that it's critical to have a strong management team.
Absolutely.
And you, I know, have put in place a very, very strong leadership team now.
Yes. And I think that's an area I'm focusing on
Yeah.
in my organization, is really building leaders within the organization.
Do you have any regrets?
No.
No.
I mean, I said nothing's a regret. I think I'm very happy with what we
Lots
are.
of
Very
learning,
excited. Yeah, a lot of learnings.
Yeah.
A lot of learnings.
Okay.
Learnings are every day.
So my last question to you, Siddharth, any advice you can give to people who want to become entrepreneurs?
I think one, if you believe in your idea and believe in what you are doing, give it time. Perseverance is an important quality for an entrepreneur. Be flexible. You've got to constantly see how your idea is playing out and have the ability to constantly change your approach in a more micro manner.
Yeah.
And finance is equally important in a business. So an entrepreneur should have good control over the finance part of it.
Wonderful. Siddharth, thank you very much. I think you have spoken from your heart a lot of interesting things about the BIBA and the Rangriti brand. I'm sure the thousands of people who listen to our podcast will learn a lot from you. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for the Brand Called You. Thank you and see you next week.